300 episodes of the Schmoes Know live show means that we have hit our 30th episode of After Schmoe. So that makes, what, like 27 that you and I have done together. Do you have any fond memories from the past 27 weeks, Jay Williams?
Fond memories?
Of After Schmoe.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you clarified that, because went to Target earlier. That was pretty eventful. Anytime Brett is on this show, it just makes me happy.
I'm talking about After Schmoe.
Oh, yeah. Anytime we get to talk about Brett, it makes me happy.
Or you could talk about the Schmoeville podcast days. I mean, do you have a particular Paul Wolf memory that you love?
I remember, you know what? I loved seeing those graphics being used. In fact, even though I haven't been on this podcast, I've had my hand in every phase of this podcast, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. And it makes absolute sense. There was the Schmoeville podcast, there was the Schmoeville after show, and then here we are at After Schmoe. You were there, whether Kristian liked it or not, Jay.
I'm getting all choked up over here.
Snelling, do you have a favorite After Schmoe memory? Yeah, I don't know. Welcome to After Schmoe, your favorite after show for Schmoes Know and Collider Video. My name is Ryan Snelling.
My name is Jay Williams. Insert obligatory 300 movie joke here.
300 movie oh, yeah. The movie 300. Your favorite Zack Snyder film, right?
I'm more of a Dawn of the Dead guy myself.
I wonder if Beardo can tell that you and I are recording this episode over Skype. Do you think he has any clue?
Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. Maybe I'm looking at you in your dirty laundry right now.
Yeah, but actually, I do have a ton of dirty laundry out here.
You always do. It's a staple of just, in general, coming over to your house.
Actually, it's not dirty necessarily. The dirty laundry's in the laundry basket. I just have a lot of laundry that I haven't put up in my drawers, but because they've been thrown and piled up, they actually are all wrinkly, so I do technically have to wash them anyway. So I guess you can easily mistake them as dirty laundry. I understand where you're coming from.
What are for the Wanger show? Do they clean up the laundry?
I am so happy that so many people enjoyed our what is a Wanger conversation. Like, I've heard a couple times people talked about it in Sight and Sound, in the Master Post, and I think people really enjoyed that. We'll talk about Joel's reaction later on in the show, but I thought that was pretty clever and funny because there's a lot of questions behind those wangers. Who actually considers themselves a wanger? And that was just a lot of fun. And of course, like most weeks, we throw out all these questions and then we get no response from the crew over at California. So we will continue to speculate. What is a wanger, Jay?
Yeah, look, real quick, I just have to say, I understand what you're saying by getting no, confirmation as to what these things are, but I've always been under the impression that if no one's calling, then you're doing something right. So as long as no one's saying, hey, take your podcast down, you've gotten something terribly wrong, then it's fine. It's okay.
What does that have to do with wondering who's a wanger?
I'm just saying that we could speculate wildly about anything, it seems like, and no one would ever know. People would just be like, oh, okay, they're still doing that show.
I wonder how far we could actually take this. What would actually have to happen for us to have an episode taken down? I wonder if we can make it happen. Well, we won't do it in this particular episode. Maybe we'll try next week. See how far we can get on something.
Speculation of the week.
Oh, what I will say. Okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to already walk back on something that I've already said. We did get confirmation from Kristian Harloff. We speculated. We knew he was drinking Perrier. We wondered, hey, could he go and switch over to LaCroix and join us on the LaCroix bandwagon? He sent me a picture of him drinking LaCroix earlier this week, Jay. Did you know that?
I did. Well, I didn't know he sent you a picture of it, but I know that he sent you confirmation that he is a a LaCroix boy. He's a LaCroix connoisseur, and nothing makes me happier than finding that out, mainly because one of the things that I just despise the most in the entire world, besides explaining what After Schmoe is to just any random person, is explaining what LaCroix is and why it's appealing at all. So the fact that I don't have to go into that with Kristian Harloff is a highlight of my year.
I feel like LaCroix is a lot easier to explain than After Schmoe.
I would agree 100%. But I feel like After Schmoe is more palatable on your first sip or first listen than LaCroix is.
Joelle was drinking a LaCroix during the live show last night. Did you notice that? She was drinking a lime.
Is that true? I actually didn't pick up on that. I should be ashamed. How dare me?
But Kristian had a Perrier again, so I don't know what's going on. Maybe he gave her his last LaCroix. I like to think that that's how that happened. I would give Joelle my last LaCroix. That's for sure.
I mean, the real question is, does Perry partake in the Perrier while wearing the Perry pants?
I never, ever thought I would say this, but Perry Nemiroff has joined the category of people that I have tweeted at.
That you have a crush on?
No.
Oh, that's my thing. Okay, go ahead.
That I've tweeted at, and inside that tweet is a question for that person, and their only reply was to just favorite the tweet. She has joined that category with John Schnepp and a few others. I never thought that Perry Nemiroff would be in that group, but she is now, based on something that happened earlier this week. I couldn't believe it.
Didn't you send a DM to one of Gary Vaynerchuk's like staff members to ask him for advice on something, and he read it and responded just with a heart?
Yeah, that did happen. It did.
What's wrong? Just respond. Just respond with something that is in reference to it. At least say, I don't have time to respond to this.
But I found out earlier this week that I actually know someone personally that works for Gary V. So that's a conversation for another time.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Let's get into some Collider talk. I've got some quick bullet points. I think there's one thing that we primarily want to discuss, but yeah, let's go back to the beginning of the week and talk about this whole JJ Abrams thing. We had an interesting time over here in Kentucky, battling people online, and Jay and I spent the entire day talking about this news. I saw the way it went down for me. I saw Movie Talk that day on my lunch break, so it was like mid-afternoon, well after the news had been unveiled, but it was also well after Movie Talk had taped that day. And Ellis told me, or sent me a message and was like, "Yeah, you have to admit that I handled that breaking news pretty well." And I was like, I'm actually behind. I just started the episode. But it was really funny to see Movie Talk already be outdated. They were just basically, they started with the story of Ryan Johnson declining to take the episode 9 job. And so I thought that was pretty funny. And then, of course, over time, as Movie Talk went on, breaking news kept coming out. And Ellis was, it was just really, really funny to hear all that happened. And I thought that he was right. He certainly handled that like a champ. Were you experiencing Movie Talk in a weird way that day, or did you watch it live? Or?
Well, first of all, I think it's hilarious that he decided to pat himself on the back vicariously through you. I feel like that's something that Kristian would never do. So it's funny, the dynamic between the two. Look, that day in general was crazy, and I think it's days like that and it's news stories like that, and especially breaking live on air while Movie Talk is going on, that it's something that all of this whole pop culture discussion space really does thrive on. I mean, I feel like all eyes were on whatever your avenue is. Hopefully it's a Collider. Hopefully it's a Sight and Sound. You never know. But I actually did not take in this news story via Movie Talk, But I went back, and I was going to watch Movie Talk anyways, but I went back to watch Movie Talk, and I was on the edge of my seat, like waiting for the moment in the episode for the news to break. So that was an interesting experience to just sort of wait and see, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? And hilariously enough, it had happened like right after Dennis Zhang had made his whole point about how Rian Johnson's definitely going to be the director of it. And that's not what happened, but it would have been hilarious if he just would have been like, well, I really do think Rian Johnson is going to be the guy. And then Mark is like, well, actually, Dennis, breaking news, and it's JJ Abrams. It just would have been hilarious.
Right.
And he would have been like, oh, okay, well.
Ellis thought that his abilities on that episode were Walter Cronkite level. Those are his words. And just to briefly say, my relationship with Mark Ellis is very, very different than my relationship with Kristian Harloff. So I just want that to be on the record. Very different.
At least you have a relationship with Mark Ellis. Mine is just selling him drugs. That's all I did.
That's true. So we talked about our craziness that we had. You and we had a ton of discussion going on throughout the day. And of course, like I said, I was at work, so I had limited knowledge. Like film Twitter was going nuts, and obviously I'm very pro Abrams, and a lot of people. I'm not saying the majority of people are anti Abrams, but they were certainly the loudest that day. It was really funny and interesting to see it. The chaos was going on in the Collider studio as well. It wasn't just us fans. And it started with this video on Instagram of Ellis just freaking out and taking it to all of the haters, the anti-Abrams movement that was going on. He was just saying some really funny, but he was being very passionate. And Ellis, I want more of that. I mean, I thought that was awesome. It was hilarious watching you get mad, but you also were just speaking my language. And I'm not saying that I want Ellis to be mad all the time, but I liked the additional message. Because, like, it's one thing. For one, I don't think he could expand on it all because on Movie Talk, he wasn't able to kind of absorb the public consciousness that was going on because they were at different times. But I don't know. I just thought that was a really funny addition, and I appreciated his words on that. So I don't know if you caught that either, but
yeah, I think the biggest thing that I take away from that is, and I think you and I kind of talked about it a little bit, how it's something that we don't typically see all the time from Mark, especially on his Instagram at least. And I am kind of curious, and I think it's something I would want to talk to him more about, just because he has this new role as the host of Movie Talk, the main guy for Movie Talk. Does he feel like his role, just not specifically on the show, not specifically on Collider, but in the space in general, is it evolving? Is it changing? Does he now need to be more of a louder sort of mouthpiece for his opinions on movie news? From obviously my limited interaction with Mark, it doesn't, he's obviously just the guy that's kind of like, I'll do whatever. But I do like this idea of him taking a more outspoken approach on whatever his opinions are. Obviously, we're used to that in the Schmoes Know realm and all of that stuff, him doing his movie reviews with Kristian from time to time. And, I appreciate it. I enjoy it quite a bit.
I want to correct you on that time-to-time thing because they have put out a healthy amount of reviews together. Yeah,
I'm aware. I watched their Mother review today.
To foil everything that we just said about Ellis, I had the privilege of getting a private show from Kristian Harloff because I was shocked that he was just not on board with this at all. And we had a little brief back and forth. I was basically telling him that I was shocked and trying to make him feel better about the decision. And he just basically said that I didn't get it. You just don't get it, man.
I mean, that's interesting. And here's what's funny about all this, and we'll get into this in just a second. But and I don't want to spoil anything going on with the live show that we're going to get to in just a little bit. But what I find the most fascinating and funny and interesting and just absurd in general is that Mark and Kristian had legitimate opposite viewpoints on this whole thing, but to this day, even though they tried to do it, they have yet to have a full-on, in-depth discussion about the topic on air, which I think is hilarious. But what is also hilarious about your private show with Kristian is the fact that you personally, even though he did tweet about it and whatnot, and he had some Twitter back and forth with people, you got the full brunt of what I like to call emotional Harloff. I mean, you had his pure 100% unadulterated, unfiltered response to this news. You were the person that had this discussion with him, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
Which I think will sort of transition into this sort of impromptu Jedi Council that popped up this week.
Yeah, go ahead. I know that you really want to talk about it. The brief one between him and Ken Knapsack that was released on the same day. Not today's. Well, this is Thursday. We're recording this on Thursday. But.
Yeah, it ended up being like a trailer for the daily Jedi Council, which we still have. Which another thing that was going on in last week's episode in the comments, very divisive. Everybody wanted to say they never announced that it was going daily, and then some people would come in. They did announce that it was going daily. We still have no idea, so you guys probably still have no idea, but we did get like a preview of what that could look like. In fact, this was the second time this has happened. They did this for the Colin Trevorrow news that he was leaving the project or he had been relieved of his duties, and then they came back and did this type of episode again this week when the JJ Abrams news broke, and both episodes were very similar, but this one in particular was very, very special because look, just to get down to the nitty-gritty of it, it was Ken and Kristian sitting across the table from one another, not only representing opposite viewpoints, but Ken. So if Mark Ellis is one polar opposite and Kristian is on the other opposite end of the spectrum, Ken literally sat in the middle and he sort of played mediator with all of these people. And Ken, the further on the episode went along, the further the conversation went, you could literally see Ken Knapsack talking Kristian Harloff off of the ledge, like further and further away. He was bringing him out of this emotional response. Kristian was being a little bit more, understanding of all sides of this thing. He obviously still has his opinion and his point of view, but Ken really did bring him back down with this whole thing. Now, what I want to say about this episode, and I have echoed it over and over and over again on this podcast, but this is the purest example of it. So I love every iteration of Collider content. I love how every show does have a panel of four people, sometimes less, sometimes more, whatever. But I have been calling for shows to have less people in them just to give a different feel. And this episode, with two people sitting there that know each other very, very well, being able to have this discussion, was fantastic. I loved every second of it, not just because I like podcast. No, it wasn't a podcast, excuse me. Well, it could have been a podcast depending how you took it in. But I loved watching this. I love the content that came out of it. I love the discussion that came out of it. And I love the fact that it was just different from things that we've gotten from Collider in the past. I want to see this more often. And if anybody has not watched this, you guys need to go back and watch it, especially now that Jedi Council proper is out. Go back and watch just to see the dynamic and how different it is. I loved how close the conversation was together. And I loved how, just smaller, more intimate it felt. What was your take on this whole thing?
You told me about it. You got to see it before I did. You pretty much told me that whole take, and so I was excited to watch it, and it didn't let me down. I really, you know why we love it so much? It's because it's the most sight and sound thing that Collider has ever done.
100%. 100%.
I was shocked, though, because I figured that Ken would... I know that he opposes I know their viewpoints oppose each other, but I figured that there would be more opposition in the movie itself. But it was more, like you said, it was Ken being sort of a mediator and trying to alleviate Kristian's sensitivity on the matter. And I think what's shocking to me about the whole thing is that Kristian has been so good at like sort of wearing the jersey. And I just figured he would have been supportive no matter what. And he just had it was just fascinating to see all of this go down. And I'm not saying he has to let up on it. And I mean, his take is his take. But I do think that they were actually able to talk it out. Whereas I don't know if anybody ever leaves movie talk having changed their viewpoint on something. Like, I don't know if those guys at the table are talking each other in and out of things. So that certainly was interesting, more than anything. Because you could see Kristian feel better about it.
Absolutely.
Despite actually flipping his entire opinion. But
Actually do have two quick points, and then we can kind of wrap it up on this. One thing that I did sort of notice, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but it also seemed like Ken played more of a host for this show, sort of directing conversation, and that just might have been because he was sort of the mediator figure. But my other point, and the point that I really want to close on, is I am fascinated by whether or not the people at Collider and just in general, Ken and Kristian, if they know how different of an episode this was. Like if they think, oh, we just showed up and just recorded, or like I know Kristian is listening to this. I know Joel's probably listening to this. Hopefully other people are too. But I really do. I would really, really be interested in them going back and almost like watching game tape, rewatching this and seeing if they think that the content is different. I'm not saying overhaul everything that we always know. I'm just saying, do you think that there is something in this? Because I personally think that it's very, very special. I'm curious to know what other people think, and I'm specifically curious to know what they think.
I think it depends a whole hell of a lot on just what the episode calls for in itself, right? So,
well, we're not always going to have this type of news to break down. 100%, I get that, and I agree with that.
The things that Collider Heroes have, that what they've been doing since they've gone daily, pretty much everything that they do requires, maybe not requires, but it feels like all three people at the table need to be there. Like, there doesn't need to be, like you said, there doesn't need to be a debate every time. It's not always about breaking news. It's not always about in-depth, long-form discussion. So I like what you said. I do wonder as well if Kristian recognizes the different type of episode that it is. And I do hope that they do it. But at the same time, it's just something that when it happens, you know?
Of course.
I hope that they embrace it in the future, but it's not like I want all of Collider to become this. You know what I mean?
100%. And yeah, just to go back on one other thing too, I don't want it to replace anything. We don't have to replace anything, guys. It can all stay the same. Maybe we do something in addition. I think a format like this would work great in a TV talk sort of thing. Like if two people are breaking down an episode, whatever it is. I mean, essentially we're talking about sight and sound. So if you guys really do like this, and no, never mind. We're not going to plug that right now. But yes, I loved it. So hats off to Kristian and to Ken.
Just to clarify the whole Daily Jedi Council thing, someone wrote in the comment section on our master post, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Linus. I can't remember. But they said that Jedi Council wasn't going to go daily because blah, 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 blah. And then Kristian just wrote false. So I don't know if he was writing false to the reasoning behind it or to the fact that they were always going daily. So we know for a fact, though, that they did promise going daily. We just don't know the why behind it. My
takeaway from his comment was because whoever that was that did comment in the master post said something about, that they're probably not going daily because they heard about the backlash from people about it going daily. And that was my takeaway from Kristian being like, false. There was no Not even if there was backlash, we weren't taking that into consideration. We've talked about that, how people were like, "Oh, Jedi Council doesn't need to go daily. What are they going to talk about?"
I told Ellis this. Well, he already made the decision. I thought I said it last week's show, but I don't think I did. We're both on the East Coast, so and I'm the host of After Schmoe. So basically, I am going to volunteer myself, and I speak for every East Coaster in Schmoeville when I say that we 100% do not need people at Collider to wake up at 5 a.m. to give us movie talk. Like, you do not feel, and I guess they already don't because they already made the decision, but it just, don't overthink us on the East Coast. We get it when we get it, and we're fine. We don't need you to go all out to record movie talk. We're watching it anyway. It's not that big of an issue, and I think they recognize that. Please don't make any kind of decision like that for people that are on the East Coast. I just don't think it matters ultimately. Like, for me, Jedi Council was released at like 10 p.m. tonight. That was an outlier, but we're still gonna watch it. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's not a make it or break it type thing. So they did decide to, go to 9 a.m. or whatever. I'm losing track of my time zones here. But.
Yeah. Look, to go off on that point, you're right. We were a little bit unclear if whether or not they had actually given that reason. And look, I want to address something right now. Okay, I was a little bit perturbed this past week. I get it. People like to be the ones that they like being the ones that have the information that the guys that do the show don't have. And that's fine. We appreciate you guys letting us know, like, hey, you were asking about this. Here's the answer. That's 100% fine. There were some people that were like, oh my, you guys are losing it. How could you have missed it? Look, take a chill pill, okay? We got a lot going on. All right, so we're not going to get everything. Just relax. Okay? It's fine. We don't need you saying, well, how dare you? How could you have missed it? It's fine.
I actually have no idea what you're talking about. Did I miss something?
There were some people this past week that were, somebody said, oh, these guys are losing it. I'm worried about you. How could you have missed when they clearly said that the reason they were changing the time was this? Because I have a lot of things going on. All right? Just take a chill.
We also just watch what we can for Collider. Like,
exactly.
If you noticed, we pretty much just primarily...
We all can't be Graham Butler watching every second of every Collider.
We pretty much just mainly talk about comic book shopping.
I mean, we just live down there.
Which pulled a Wanger show this week and skipped an episode. Where's the Todd McFarlane episode?
Yeah, where is it? Where's the Michael Rooker episode? Oh, wait, no, that happened already.
So, Rocha hosted Movie Talk today. I thought that he crushed it. It was sort of like a flawless performance. He didn't mess up at any point. He didn't get flustered or anything like that. I thought he killed it. So great job, Rocha. Yeah, that's all I got really for Collider stuff.
Yeah, I'm still kind of pinching myself. It's still a little bit strange to see Rocha there as much as he is. Like, I keep waking up and seeing him on there, like, oh yeah, Rocha's full time now. It's just kind of strange. I've been so used to him just popping in every once in a while, and I like it. It's a feel good factor that I enjoy.
You have to pinch yourself because of John Rocha.
I have to Pinterest myself. I have to pin myself.
What? All right,
Pinterest. All the kids are doing.
Let's get to your history lesson before we move into the Schmoes Know live show recap, Jay.
Let's do it. So one of Kristian's favorite segments, I felt even more pressure to get it done this week, and I stumbled upon quite a gem. I don't always want to just land on the moments that everybody has in the back of their minds, like, oh, the same ones, the cat attacking the Triceratops thing. Like, yeah, those are great moments, but I like the deeper cuts for sure. My question to you leading into this history lesson, Ryan Snelling, is Would you consider yourself a dancer?
No.
You're not a dancer. You've showed me some of your dance moves before, though.
I have like 2 moves that I never actually do in a formal setting. I do them in private or to my close friends, but I hate dancing. Yeah.
Okay, of all the people, who would you say is the dancer of the bunch? Like, if they're going out to a party, who's the guy the most likely to break out the dance moves?
Makuga.
100%. And in fact, I stumbled upon this little gem where the entire crew, essentially back in the Toad Hop days, back in, was it June 13th of 2013 was when this clip came from. They all got invited to Maria Menounos' party, a party that she threw, and Josh Makuga decided to participate in a dance battle, but he actually ended up battling one of the winners of Dancing with the Stars, which I think is hilarious. And
no, it wasn't Derek. It was Derek Hough, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was that. It either was that guy or he was there. I can't remember, but regardless, you'll hear about it. And also, just a bunch of names that you will hear pop up, including a dance battle with Topher Grace himself.
But let's talk about the Wild Man, because this is something that impressed all of us. Now, we all know here in Schmoeville that he's fearless, but this takes it to a new level, where everyone's at a party and there's this big circle. And Maria Menounos was in Dancing with the Stars, so she's out there and she's just moving. By the way, yeah, she was with the guy we'll talk about in a second. But the one thing about
doesn't do his research.
No,
he just shows up to play.
He didn't even know who he was dancing with.
No, he did. So
gamer.
The thing though, what was so great about Maria Menounos, by the way, and Kevin, is the fact that when we got there, they were as cool on there as they were on the show. These are some of the coolest people that I think that we've met too, because they were like super open and remembered everyone's name. It was so much fun. They really made it a lot of fun for everyone to be there. But so we get there and there's this big party and Maria Menounos is dancing around and you got at one point, I mean, the fucking Kardashians there. Mel Gibson's over on one side. It's you know, you get Topher Grace and
my doppelganger was there.
Yes, and Turtles there, and it's crazy. It's this crazy thing. And so all these people are dancing. So it's kind of, everyone's watching Menounos. So who jumps in the middle of the circle? And by the way, you can see this thing we're about to talk to on Schmoe Plus if you go there. Makuga jumps in the middle of the circle, and people are like, "Who is this madman?" And then I see Derek Hough, the champion of Dancing with the Stars, like 100 times. He's like, "Look at that guy!"
And he just won this season with Kelly Pickler too.
And so he's pointing. He's like, "Look at that guy! Look at that guy!" And I walk and I see him. I see Derek looking at Makuga, and I run up to him and I go, "It's all about that guy's eyes. That guy's eyes are crazy." Talking about Makuga, and I'm like, "Look at his eyes! Look at his eyes!" And then so
you did have the crazy eyes going. It's probably all those Patron Jello shots.
Absolutely. But then
Patron popsicles.
Menounos moves out of the circle. Someone else and Makuga gets into a dance off with the fucking Dancing with the Stars champion,
the reigning champion, number 1 with the bullet. Makuga says, "I don't fear this guy."
No.
And to his credit, if you watch the video, I think everybody here and everybody at the party definitely agreed.
Schmoe Plus.
Makuga wins. Makuga wins.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the great part was Derek didn't try and like do his ballroom like dance moves. He like was meeting you with whatever moves you threw at him. He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do that same move. It's fine."
Yeah.
You know what it was? It was a guy who's great in the gym. You know, he's great shooting threes in a nice, serene country club setting. But when you get out on the hardwood, man, when you get out on Rucker Park, you got to talk it and back it up, and that's what Josh Makuga did.
I'm a gamer. I'm a gamer.
You're a dancer.
He sure was.
That's what you are.
So Makuga, so real quick, how much fun did you have? What was your favorite party?
That was one of the more fun parties I've ever been to.
Okay.
And I've been to quite a few, and I don't remember a lot of it.
You don't remember my favorite part?
Yeah, I didn't because you had to call in threes too much and tell it. But I do remember dancing with Derek Hough, and then I remember I like grabbed Maria Menounos, dipped her, and her like lei fell off. You can see that in the video. I like prop it back in the thing, and she went in for a kiss in the cheek. And she caught like part of my mouth, which was like the highlight of my life.
A corner kiss.
Oh
my
god! And then
did you do the little head twirl right before she went?
That
in?
wasn't.
He totally did.
It was the Jersey.
That wasn't Menounos. That was actually Mel Gibson.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
But and then I went to the bar and I'm like winded. I'm dying because I was dancing pretty hard, and the bartender was like, "Dude, you're like the life of the party." And
Yeah,
I
it was
was
pretty
like, "All right,
great.
I'll be back." And I just like jump back in.
And he's being modest too, because then he danced with Julianne Hough, by the way,
Yes,
Footloose
he did.
Girl,
Yeah.
for a long time, and that was awesome. We had a lot of video of that, and Derek
Oh, jeez.
grabbed the video from Riley from his phone and deleted the video.
Did he really?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
When
couldn't
he
believe
took
it.
Though, it was so slick.
It was
Like
so
it was like,
slick. Let me
hey,
see.
it wasn't
Hey,
mean.
no, it
it
wasn't
wasn't.
mean.
It was just like, hey.
No, let me show you. Yeah, and it was really nice. But then the other thing was too. So then I look over, and then Topher Grace sees everybody dancing with Makuga. He's like, I got to get in on this. So he starts dancing with Makuga, and he jumps onto Makuga to like catch him. Makuga catches him for about 2 seconds. Then they just fall hard, crash onto the floor. Everyone's cracking up, and I was like, he just dropped Mark Ellis.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, are you sure this is Topher?
Yeah, we were sure.
Everybody has had a few drinks, so you're sure it was Topher Grace.
If it was you, I think you would be in a lot more pain today after falling on the ground.
Yeah, that's right. But when you have a hernia, you're kind of restricted as far as jumping into another man's arm.
Yeah, did you hear the
Right.
news? Topher had to drop out of his latest project because of his back.
But anyway,
Crazy.
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
Look, it was a lot of fun.
stop
It was a lot of fun. I'm glad that we all went. And and again, thank you to Maria
Dude, you had a
Menounos.
really funny line though when you came up to me and you were like, "Dude, if I would have told my 12-year-old self that I'd be at a party one day with Mel Gibson, I would have said, all right, sir."
No, I would have said, "Will you be my dad?" I tweeted that out. Thank you.
Man, that history lesson was really shitty.
It was long. It was 5 minutes long. How do you feel about that?
Was it actually? Is it actually 5 minutes long?
It's 5 minutes long.
Well, now I'm glad that I haven't actually listened to it yet. It's for Kristian, okay?
That's right. It's for Kristian. Congratulations, Kristian.
I just imagine no one else giving a shit about that segment, and we only do that to appease him.
I think the fans like it. I think they
Oh,
like
of course,
it. We'll
yeah.
get a comment every now and then.
Of course they do. This whole 300th show was a massive history lesson, and it was great. It was a ton of fun. Let's go on and get okay.
One small thing real quick. So I do have to say that this was not planned. I 100%, I promise you it wasn't planned. But when I resumed listening to the Toad Hop stuff, to like go and find my history lessons, the very next episode was the 100th episode. And I almost put it in, but they essentially covered most of the things from the episode in their montage, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I do have a bone to pick. The 100th episode was 3 hours long. Okay? So it's not out of the question for us to ask that the 300th episode be 3 hours long.
Did someone say that it was out of the question?
No, but I'll be honest with you. I was a little disappointed. I could have gone all night. Disappointed is the wrong word. I loved the episode. I just didn't want it to end.
I feel like so much of this episode has just been you having these phantom debates with people.
Just making them
Because
up.
I'm certainly not sitting here arguing with you, and it's like you're just really on the defensive today.
Yeah. I'm on edge. I'm on the edge. I'm about to break.
Let's get to we're talking about, of course, the Schmoes Know live show episode 300. Let's get to Jaye Williams' stream of consciousness notes.
Okay, well, let me unlock my phone here. These are your Schmoes Know live show stream of consciousness notes brought to you by Sight Sound Pod. Wait, no, by sightsoundpod.com. Okay. What a nice montage. How the hell did we get mentioned in the first 5 minutes of the show? Oh, he's grilling while listening this week. Joel loves us? I'm legitimately honored to have notes from Joel. Fuck yes, Brett is drinking. Welcome back, the real Brett Sheridan. What the hell? No one hates Makuga on this show. We've been super positive with him. Did anyone tell him I'm not Brian Davids and he's not on this show anymore? Jesus, never bring the possums on the porch in those Perry pants. Kristian Harloff, I'm in a la-la land thinking about a raise, whatever that means. History lessons will be more frequent. That's for you, Kristian. Okay, Ken, listen sometimes, and that's good to know. I read that weird. Okay. Ken listens sometimes. That's good to know. Punctuation would be great in these notes. I love uncovering the development of the show on episode 300. I've always wanted to know. Oh my God, Umberto drop. I love it. Team Makuga till death. Dagnino appearance has made the night. Shout out to Harlem Heat. Mark is oddly relaxed. Is he drunk? I hope so. Why is Makuga just randomly hovering around Mark? Never mind, that question has been answered. Tiffany Smith is there. I'm Team Tiffany. JJ for episode 9. Suck it, Harloff. Tom Dagnino is fire. Ken looks great in a hat. Did someone say CTE? I don't remember.
Oh my.
Oh my God, Finstock smoking cloves by a popcorn machine is amazing. Brett is just walking up on the microphone and I love it. The show is getting out of control and I love it. Brett is fire. Oh my God, this is where the beef started. Makuga feels overshadowed by Brett during the Kristian roast. I love Mance. I wonder what Josh Makuga smells like. Oh yeah, let's hear from Max. I'm just trying to get my credits. And that is your Schmoes Know Stream of Conscious Notes brought to you by SightSoundPod.com.
I posted earlier in Schmoeville that I was going to be hauling bodies if Tom Dagnino did not appear on the 300th episode of Schmoes Know. And that was obviously the highlight for me. Not obviously. And also, that's just not true. But I did really love that. And I think the hardest laugh of the night was when I heard that he was smoking cloves by the popcorn machine. I fucking lost it at that moment.
Who smokes cloves past middle school? That's what I want to know.
Excuse me, was that you questioning my boy Tom Dagnino?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a legitimate cartoon character, and he's doing cartoon character shit, and I love it. I love his dedication to the character.
You probably just want him to pick up vaping.
Well, yeah, it's healthier. You don't have to smoke spices anymore.
So let's talk about the opening montage for a second. Shout out to RB3 for making that montage. That was a whole lot of fun. I've seen most of what I saw. I've seen already, but it was fun remembering things like Sinead's orgasm.
You like that?
It was a nice reminder.
That's good to know.
What did you take from the montage? What did you like to see?
Well, more than anything, that montage brought back a lot of memories about the first time I watched a lot of those things. One night, my girlfriend was out of town, and I was feeling a little particularly lonely, so I decided to fire up some of the best moments from the Schmoes Know live show, and I just watched these fan-made montages, and a lot of them had these moments on them, which I enjoy quite a bit. I actually started a little bit late. Did the cat moment not make it in? Did the cat like attacking Kristian not make it? And that's just a travesty. I mean, I know it was addressed on the show, but that was certainly one of my favorite moments for sure.
I'm glad that you brought up that moment. For one, it's hilarious, and they did talk about later on in the episode. But something I want to say, it's not just about the montage. This is a general statement. I was actually worried that we were going to go into this 300th episode without them acknowledging Sasha Pearl Raver.
Right.
And I am thrilled that she just wasn't avoided and wasn't ignored. And I guess I should say that I still don't know what actually happened beyond the fact that, you know, all of these pundits, these people that the people that work in this space, they're all hired guns, essentially. And, you know, so whatever happened to where she was no longer at Collider and Schmoes Know, and they didn't really explain it. I didn't know what happened. So I didn't want them to just completely gloss over her, because she is someone, I was a huge fan of her on this show, and we talked about her a lot on After Schmoe. They included her in the slideshow. They mentioned her later on, and they were bringing her up amongst some of their most favorite moments, and so I was just really happy about that in general. But yeah, that montage, even though I had seen a lot of it, was just really fun to watch and well done by everyone involved in making it, and primarily RB3, unless someone else helped out. But anyway, I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, and the thing about Sasha too, and I echo your sentiments. The thing about Sasha that I think is sometimes forgotten is the fact that in this phase, at least specifically, like when you kind of turned me on to Schmoes and I was like checking it out for the first time, seeing her so frequently on the show, really paving the way for women and really dominating that thing that we call the curse of the fourth chair. Like, that was just never an issue for her. And in this phase specifically, also obviously when Miri was involved with the show, but you know, she was a part of the crew, but just being a host of the table, such a fantastic job. And I agree. I was glad to see that she was acknowledged.
Well, I'm only going to say this just because you're going to get it in the comments, I think, but guys, people, Jay knows that Alicia and Tiffany and all them came before Sasha. So
that's why I specifically said this phase in particular.
Right. Where was I going with that? I don't know. I did appreciate how Kristian addressed at the very top that episode was going to, and we kind of knew, but he addressed it at the top that this episode was going to be for the hardcore fans, and I'm so happy. That's what I wanted. I didn't really want them, even though we talked about how we missed out on Kristian and Mark talking about the JJ thing. I didn't need them to talk about anything else, and as a matter of fact, I kind of didn't want, and I'm kind of glad that they didn't go to phone calls. I really wanted
Agreed.
I wanted them to take the time to spend the entire 2 hours enjoying each other. And I'm sure that there were some things that happened that like JTE coming in very late, they were probably waiting on him. That's probably why a lot of stuff got pushed out, but some of that stuff they didn't probably have planned to a T, but it really didn't matter because the show was about just letting the doors be open and anyone who wants to come in can come in, and that's why I didn't want them to take any more time away talking. I didn't need that JJ stuff, so I'm glad that they didn't do it, and I'm glad that Kristian went into it with that mentality, like, let's just do the show for the hardcore fans, and essentially let's just do it for us, because that's what this is going to be, and they pulled it off. And much like that great opening montage, the whole episode was another montage and just a lot of great reminiscing, and I learned a lot. Ken noted, and I was shocked that Ken knew this about me, but yeah, I've seen old episodes and I've heard history lessons. I've heard a lot of things referenced throughout Phase 6, so I do have plenty of an understanding when it comes to Schmoes Know. I've heard all their interviews across multiple podcasts. There were still things that popped up that I didn't even know, and that's another thing that I really, really loved about this episode, is that it was still an education, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm still wondering what the hell this after show thing is. I want to know what happened. I mean, they referenced it enough. Like, it was so inside baseball that it was obviously this historic thing that took place that they all just love to joke about, that just none of us have any knowledge of, which I think is great. But look, I mean, I don't think you have to. I don't think you have to be a Schmoes Know historian to have enjoyed this show, just because of just how passionate and enamored everybody was with just celebrating not just Schmoes Know, not just Kristian and Mark, not just the crew, but Schmoeville in general as well. I mean, so many nice praises were heaped upon Schmoeville during this episode too. It really was just a celebration of everything. Rizika's name got brought up quite a bit. Rizika is somebody that I love. I'm very passionate about Rizika, our rivalry with Twin Peaks. I don't know why I'm talking about this right now, but regardless, it's just something that stuck out to me.
So the After Hours thing, I think that, for one, people have seen it. People do know what happened when it first came out.
Right, when it aired, yeah.
But After Hours, the past 2 years that I've been involved with Schmoes, it's one of those things that I think plenty of people, it's a game of telephone. So a lot of people will tell me, I think it involved this, and if I remember this correctly, blah, blah, blah happened. But I've never really been able to, it's never felt concrete. So I still don't feel comfortable talking about it, just because I still feel like I have no clue, and everybody has their own version of what happened, or they've forgotten a lot of it. I think that it genuinely comes down to, I think that Kristian has that thing on total lockdown. I think it almost, I could see Kristian making everyone sign an NDA to never release that footage again. And I genuinely think it would be a huge problem if someone released it. I know that they were making a lot of jokes about JTE releasing it, and it was hilarious. But I think there's an understanding over there that no one is supposed to talk about that thing ever again. And I really wish, for one, I wish that I could see it, but I wish that you had more context as well, because I'm just fascinated by all of it. And it just makes me want to watch it even more, but they don't want us to, so.
Yeah, I mean, my imagination is running wild. Like, in my mind, Finstock took his pants off. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what really went down, but someone's pants were probably removed. Look, we're jumping around a little bit. We would be completely remiss if we didn't talk about Kristian supporting this brand new segment that's going to, I guess, pop up on the show from time to time, these Joel Notes. What's your take on the Joel Notes?
So I have a lot to say about Joel. Last week at the top of the show, I said that Joel doesn't need to listen to our show, and basically where I was coming from, Joel is in rotation as a co-host of the Schmoes Live show, and I basically said she didn't need to listen to the show because, we spend 30 minutes talking about Collider, and it's not like we're Kristian should listen to our show. Joel just doesn't need to. At least so I thought, but she seemed to create her own segment, and based on what she heard from our show, and I'm thrilled to death that she did it, because last week she said that she felt like she was a terrible person for never listening to the show, and of course that's silly. I never really thought she didn't need to listen to the show, but the fact that she did on her own, and the fact that she wrote down notes, and I don't think she planned on making it a segment. She probably told Kristian, I took some notes, and Kristian wanted her to talk about it. Look, I have hosted this show. Yes, this is episode 30 of After Schmoe, but there were other iterations of this podcast. I have been doing this for the Schmoes for a year and a half. And what Joel did is unlike anything that it's unlike it's hold on, let me go back. Hold on. I've done this show for a year and a half, and what Joel did is unlike anything that's been done from anyone else in that studio for our show. And I don't want to spend hardly any time talking about Makuga. But what Joel did foiled what Makuga did so much, and it just made me appreciate Joel even more. because basically what we got from Makuga, I thought about ripping into him, but I'm not. But everything that came from Makuga's mouth was just bile and sewage, and it was just, look, I'm over everything that he said, because I'm not just some guy that does this thing. I've done this for a year and a half. So I'm glad that he said all of that, because it made Joelle shine even more, and it made me appreciate what Joelle had done even more. So I hope Joelle was listening to this, because no one else has done anything like this for us, aside from the schmoes that plug us every week. I'm not saying that they don't do anything for us, because they do. But again, I just want to say thank you so much, and thank you for drinking a LaCroix. It was actually like good criticism, and I actually like how that's something that I wish happened more in general. We, like I said earlier, we go back and forth. We talk about Collider. We talk about Schmoes Know all the time, but we don't get a whole lot of confirmation. We don't get a whole lot of like, this is actually why we title the Schmoes Know Show SK Show. Like, we didn't get a response from any of that. So it was actually nice for someone to be like, yeah, they talk about SEO and how, this been blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, I've never, ever gotten that kind of feedback before. So again, and maybe I should stop talking, because you can tell that I'm just over the moon by everything that she did, and I really, really appreciate it, and thank you, Joelle, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, look, I super appreciate that sentiment. It's amazing and it's fantastic, and hopefully you do enjoy listening to the show, Joelle, because we do love you, we appreciate you. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The bubbly attitude and just the brightness that she brings to the show. Not that like other people are like sitting in the dark, depressed or something like that, but just in general, what she brings to the show is so much different, I think, than so many other people, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that she brings her personality and her stamp on the show. To the Makuga thing that you touched on, I don't have as much of an emotional response to it, because he's not alone. And I mean, he might have been the one that was the most vocal in the room, and that's fine. He's obviously entitled to any opinion that he has, but I just, no one else really listens to the show. That's fine. Nobody else has to listen to the show. But I don't think that invalidates us and our involvement at all, because Kristian, every time he's on the show, he brings us up and he makes a joke about it. Like you guys aren't, he puts them sort of on the spot. So look, it's great. I think it's cool that she's going to make a segment. I think she gave us a little bit more credit than we probably deserve. Like when she brought up that whole SEO thing, I was like, what did we talk about? And then it kind of came back to me what we were talking about. Look, we think very hard about this stuff. We're very analytical about this stuff, but that's probably more so just our personalities in general. Like, I'm not sitting around like, dissecting the inner workings and the business of Collider on a daily basis. It's just, this is the task that we've been given. So thank you for those kind words, but I think you're giving us too much credit.
Joelle spent the entire time, I think, on the verge of tears. By the way, I was paying attention to her because
of us.
No, throughout the entire episode, people send the whole ending of the show was them talking about how much they loved each other and reminiscing, and I feel like she was on the verge of tears the entire time, which is fun because she's newer, yet she's already gained this so much appreciation for everything that's gone on. I do need Joelle to know, because we talked to, I don't know how many shows that she's listened to of ours, but when
I think she said 2, right?
Well, I'm not sure, but she said that she heard us say that she didn't really talk very much. So for Joelle, we talk a whole lot about the curse of the fourth chair and how the fourth chair has to sort of sing for their supper, because sometimes Kristian and Ellis and Ken can just be so involved with what they're talking about. Sometimes the fourth chair gets left out. So it wasn't really a Joelle thing. It's always a fourth chair problem, and we've talked a lot about that on After Schmoe. quick point. I'm glad that they brought up the schmoesknow.com and sort of they talked about that for a little bit, because I feel like the .com and the people that work on the .com is one of the most overlooked things from these guys. So I'm glad that actually came up. An anecdote. Kristian's possum story had me on the fucking floor. Oh my God. That was incredible.
Yeah, I didn't even know California had possums. I'm glad that I now have this this confirmation. It is an absolutely hilarious story. I mean, Mark Fernandez, give the guy a raise if that's what he's dreaming about. He's dreaming about those raises. I mean, he's a busy man. He's dreaming about possums. The fact that his father-in-law left out dog food, never leave out the dog food on the back porch. You know what else California has are mountain lions.
Yeah.
I'm just glad it wasn't a fucking mountain lion. Jesus.
Yeah.
In our neck of the woods, it would have been a horse. A horse would have showed up on the back porch.
We would have known if it were mountain lions if Ellis had gotten a text that just read ambulance. Also, there's a couple of other funny anecdotal things that I learned, like that time. The early rivalries conversation that they had was fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh
I agree
God.
100%.
Like the fact that Jeff Snyder and Kristian, or Jeff Snyder had a problem with Schmoes, and they were talking about how it all stemmed from the .com breaking news stories, which, again, I have my opinions on movie bloggers and how serious they take breaking things. But anyway, the fact that I thought it was hilarious that they sat down and met and talked it out, and then at the end, Snyder asked Kristian to smoke a joint. Schmoesknow.com was involved, or was mentioned in the Sony hack. Just a lot of really fascinating stories that I'd never heard before. Let's talk about who came by and saw them. The first notable one was the phone call from Booker T, right?
Yeah, from what I can remember, this was actually supposed to take place, I think, a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week when I was supposed to call in, or when I did call in. I think Booker T was also going to call in as well. But it was nice. It was almost more special, I think, even though it was a moment in the show that stood out a little bit different from the rest. I think it was nice to sort of serve as a reminder, where Kristian's come from with his wrestling background. Obviously, the passion that Ken shares for professional wrestling as well. It was very, very nice. And just the fact that for Booker T to say how important the Schmoedown is outside of the things that he does, just how people are coming up to him and interacting with him and talking to him about the Schmoedown, just to see the crossover actually play out. And, I think it was genuine. I think it was 100% genuine. And it made me walk away from it being an even a bigger Booker T fan. Like I said, shout out to Harlem Heat. I was more of a WCW guy. Like, I don't even remember Booker T in WWE. So I only remember him from WCW, but I was a massive WCW fan.
I didn't know any of the backstory. I didn't know how Booker T got involved, and I've actually before asked Kristian.
Some guy named Brad.
I actually asked Kristian once, like, how much does he actually know, or is he just like reading from a note card? Like, I really didn't know how he got involved. So hearing that was great. I love that it came from Booker essentially. And that phone call made Kristian so fucking happy. He was grinning ear to ear. He did it a lot last night, but he loved and really appreciated that phone call. I thought that was really a really great moment for him, and it was a really great moment for Ken as well to get to talk to him. Of course, like I said, I was so pumped when Finstock came in. He did not let me down at all. I'm curious, who did you think walked in when Finstock noticed the beautiful young lady who had been working out? She was off camera. Who did you think that was? Did you have any idea?
Well, I mean, I clearly thought that it was Tiffany just because of their previous history. Look, but while we're on the topic of Finstock, Tom Dagnino, the many names that he goes by, there is something special, and I'm sure it's happened before, and I'm just now sort of realizing it. I think when you mix the wackiness and the off the wall and the unpredictability of that episode, alcohol, Tom Dagnino, and Brett Sheridan, nothing but pure magic that not even Kristian Harloff himself can control comes. Because Brett, with Tom Dagnino's presence, it was almost like the older brother, even though Finstock's probably younger than Brett, Big Brother was there and could get away with a little bit more. So that was like showing Brett that he, like, when Finstock walked up on the microphone just in the middle of the show randomly, and Brett was like, "Oh, I guess we could just do this now." Like, I thought it was so fucking funny, and how Kristian was like, "Brett, go sit down, go sit down over there. You're ruining the show." It was a classic moment.
A lot of other okay, hold on. Some things that I got more context about. Catherine Reitman, Shoesy Pants. These are a lot of things that I've heard come up over the years. Cheese, but I wasn't exactly sure if I knew who they were. So it was nice to get some more context with that. One huge revelation for me, and I think they said that this was the first time it had ever been revealed ever, was the fact that the whole Bonnie Somerville and Katie Sackhoff rivalry was totally fake, which is not something I knew, and I wonder how many people knew that. I don't think a lot. So that was incredible.
Yeah, we have that one listener of After Schmoe that is constantly asking me to throw in a history lesson about that, and I wonder if they are disappointed by that fact. I don't know.
Maybe. And of course, Katie Sackhoff called in. She was huge for the development of this show starting out, so that was great. One thing I didn't realize is how involved Roxy was. I thought that Roxy, I didn't realize she was involved at all, and I knew that the Schmoes were, of course, in the AfterBuzz studio, but I didn't necessarily know that Roxy worked there yet. So I thought that, like, Roxy stopping by on Phase 6 was purely a matter of her just being in this space, working at Screen Junkies, working at these places. I thought, or maybe being friends with Makuga. She's been on TV Talk a couple times. I didn't realize she herself had this personal history with the Schmoes. So that was interesting, and she ended up having one of the most heartfelt. I don't know. She had one of the most heartfelt dialogues at the end of the night, and I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know about that at all.
Yeah, I think in general the theme that I took away from it is just how deep the roots go into the ground with the Schmoes. I mean, obviously we're aware that they have an impact on a large group of people, everybody that was there, and even further extending all the way here to Kentucky. But I think my biggest takeaway from it all was just this, how interesting it was to see the extent of all of this. Pretty much like you said, obviously I don't have as much not necessarily interaction, but I haven't gotten to see Roxy as much involved with the show as other people have. Especially, I'm too far back in my history lessons right now. I'll see more of her in the future, obviously. But yeah, just hearing all of that was very fascinating. One of my biggest takeaways from hearing some behind the scenes stuff for the AfterBuzz Studios was hearing the perception of the Schmoes working in the AfterBuzz Studios, like how every time they would leave that it would smell like a frat house and it would just reek of booze, and how people were intimidated of them and whatnot. Like, it's hilarious to think about this this sort of, I don't know, air about their presence that sort of carries with them from place to place. That's interesting to me.
Was there anyone that you were surprised didn't make it to this taping?
I was a little bit surprised that Makuga. I was a little bit surprised that John Rocco wasn't there. I thought he would have been there, but I guess the fact that he just works there now in general, and we see so much more of him, was, that's fine. Not Not in particular. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that other people can probably bring up that I would be surprised didn't show up. No, not really. I wasn't really too shocked that I didn't see anybody. Did you have somebody in mind?
I think the easiest one is Jeremy Johns. What?
Yeah.
I thought that was so weird that he wasn't there.
Jeremy, and even, like, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but even like maybe a phone call or something from Chris Stuckman, because Stuckman, I mean, shit, man, he's been super involved. I would say as involved as Jeremy has been in the history, at least from my going back in the past. Like, obviously, Jeremy's been there more often just because he was West Coast in general before living in California. But, like, I mean, Chris Stuckman was there for the trial of JTE. He had called in numerous times. I mean, I thought that maybe we could have at least gotten a message from him. Again, not throwing anybody under the bus, but it would have made sense. Let's just put it that way.
I guess, and the other thing, too, I'm not saying I'm surprised they weren't here, but someone I wish was there was Alicia Malone, and, of course, I think everyone wishes that she was there. And then the other weird thing is that there wasn't a single screen junkie there outside of JTE, and maybe JTE doesn't count because, you know, Kristian declares him Schmoe. But other than Roxy, I think it's weird that there wasn't a single screen junkie there. But other than that, I mean, I understand Scott Mance was out of town, and so Katie Sackhoff, Bunny Somerville, or elsewhere. So, but anyway,
I do have one very small thing that I want to bring up, and maybe it can transition into any other thing that you picked up on. There were a few things in this episode that were thrown out there very nonchalantly that I think might have fallen under the radar, that they didn't make too much of, but were kind of big revelations, and maybe I'm making too much of it. But Kristian at one point did drop a little hint about a potential new space. Did you pick up on that at all?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but he basically said, he just said, like, until we move elsewhere. It was just like a throwaway line, right?
Again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, and other people can let me know what they think. And it very well could have just been that, like, oh, maybe when we move to our next place, we could blah, blah, blah. I thought that somebody was talking about how hard it was to come around, or how they wish they could come around more often. And he had pretty much said, oh, well, when we move into our new space, it should be easier for you. Like that. And that's why I think it spurred like some sort of interest. Like, are they looking at another space? I mean, that would be incredibly difficult considering that they already can utilize Collider equipment in multiple. You know what I mean? They can use it. It would be very difficult for them to go out and fund their own production equipment unless Collider in general is thinking about moving. But I don't know. Just a little thing that I picked up on that could be nothing, or it could be a little nugget of information. I don't know.
I wanted this to be a surprise, but I actually signed the lease for that building, and it's going to become Sight and Sound Studios. And so they were forced to move out.
Well, I don't know how that's going to go because I just signed a lease in Hollywood. No, I don't know. I was trying to make a joke, but it didn't work. Never mind.
Yeah, that was terrible. But I did want to say that Fernandez was buying Sight and Sound as well, but your terrible joke will suffice, I guess. I'm glad JTE ended up making it, and that's all I got. I think the other throwaway thing that I wanted to ask you, which is, this is essentially nothing, but did you notice that Kristian called Beardo the ice truck killer?
I didn't hear that, but that's hilarious. A lot of shade being thrown at Beardo. Lay off Beardo. No, look, I think. Well, one thing that made me happy was just some of the praises that were heaped on the Wangers, and look, Kristian sort of identified it towards the end, and I think we'll talk here in a second about our takeaway from everybody giving their kind of final sign-offs and whatnot of this 300th episode, but he pretty much made the statement that as much as we joke with people and people think that we're picking on this person or we're being mean to this person or whatever, we're being hard on so-and-so, It is all in love, and I think sometimes the wangers that they feel the brunt of it just because they're the young guys, they're the guys behind the camera, But look, nobody in that studio, and us included, ever in a million years does not realize how, first of all, how crucial and key those guys are, but also how fantastic of a job that they do. And I'm talking about all of them. I'm talking about Cobster, Cody, Beardo, RB3, Ace. I mean, that Max kid, Cal, whatever. Is Cal Wanger? I don't know. But regardless, we all appreciate them. We all respect them. And I was glad that they even, got some of the spotlight last night as well.
I don't have a whole lot of notes left because, I mean, of course, there's a whole bunch of things to rapid fire, but I think it's basically just commenting on, well, I guess you could say that about every episode of After Schmoe. But there's no need to gloss over the same memories that they glossed over last night, essentially. But
well, I mean, I do want to talk real quick about the sort of the heartfelt send off and whatnot.
I was getting to that.
Okay. Well, I was pulling a thing that Mark did last night. It sounded like you were wrapping it up, and I wasn't ready to go yet.
So, what notes do you have on that section of the show? I think I actually did want to talk about the Wangers because I think that their send-offs were really fun to listen to because, again, you get that, and JTE included. I think it's fascinating to hear how many people were fans of Schmoes Know prior to knowing Mark and Kristian. And I mean, that was like half of the accounts that we got last night, is that these people started out as fans, and you hear someone like Hopster be like, yeah, sometimes it's still weird for me to come to work and realize that I'm actually friends with Mark and Kristian and that I work on this show. And I thought that was really, really fun to hear. And I don't know, it was just a lot of fun. And I know that something that we've said before on this show, or maybe I said it, it's that I've never heard anyone legitimately criticize Mark and Kristian for anything. Like, I don't know how anyone has a legitimate problem with either of those guys. I don't feel like they're polarizing, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like, when Kristian, I don't remember if he brought it up last night, but he's brought it up before. There was a time when Kristian got a tweet from someone who expressed that they were tired. I guess they followed Kristian because he was a Star Wars guru, and then they followed him and didn't realize that he was going to tweet a lot about the Schmoedown. And so that person expressed his concern, saying that he basically asked them to quit tweeting about the Schmoedown. And that was like one of the first times I've ever heard someone actually like criticize them in any way in that capacity. There's not a single person that it just all made sense. It all made sense. The appreciation that I felt from these people, the fondness that everyone had for the show and its history and for Mark and Kristian, it was just exactly what I thought people would say about Mark and Kristian. But that didn't take away how special that was. And I hated that. I hope that they didn't feel rushed at that point, because I really loved every single person's dialogue at that point. And I could have heard it from a million more people. But anyway, I just really, really loved hearing all of that, because it just makes sense. I mean, so many people are so appreciative, and I'm also glad that, going back to what I said about the Wangers, is that Kristian doesn't take credit. He doesn't take credit for the fact that it's literally him that built it all, and it's literally him that got all of his friends together in that room, hired all of his friends to work with him. It's just, he doesn't take any of the credit, but it's him, and I'm glad someone brought that up as well. Anyway, it was just very special, and that's obvious. I don't really need to go over that, but that's pretty much my takeaway from that whole portion.
Yeah, I think, my takeaway was just the fact that it's funny to me that we see literally every day now. We've talked about it, especially in this sort of new leaf that Collider is turning over in general, this sort of transition, that Collider is essentially Schmoes Know, plus some other people as well, and that's awesome. The fact that they have made a dream a reality, the fact that they have been able to create a workplace of their friends is fantastic, and it's a very special thing. But we all get burnout from our day jobs, and I'm sure they're not immune to that feeling. But it was a show like this, a show about reflection, when they got down into the reflection on their relationships with one another, that is found very touching and very special. And, I wouldn't even mind taking a second towards the end of this episode to sort of say our pieces as well. We've been at it in a limited capacity. But, I think the Wangers specifically, like I've already said, were probably the more touching, just because they've had the least amount of experience with these people. They're the youngest individuals, and they are behind the camera more often than not. And it was just very special to hear even somebody like Ace come out and have such fond memories and such nice and polite things to say. And for me, you talked about revelations. I mean, there were people that I just haven't had that much time with personally, like somebody like a Roxy, to hear that stuff for the first time. Because I've heard some of these things before, the stuff with Riley. I know he was going through a particularly tough time in his life when Kristian and Mark and the Schmoes in general came into it. And Brett, even, how much it means to him. All of it was just very special, and it was very nice. I can't wait until the 400th episode when we get to hear this stuff again. In fact, I might go back and listen to it just for a feel-good moment for the day.
Another thing that I loved hearing Kristian address, because I don't know if I've ever heard him say it before, but he said that it wasn't about how many subscribers they had or how long that they'd been doing it necessarily, but it was about the fact that they did it first and that they were still around. Ellis brought up how Schmoes Know has been a thing for 10 years. I just love that. They were the first, and I just think it's really cool. But again, like Kristian said, it's not about the subscriber count, because he's the only person that I know of, maybe like Red Letter Media or something, but from what I know, he's the only person that gets to go into work with his best friend, the friends that he had prior. I'm not talking about like Screen Junkies where they might have become friends after working together. I'm talking about the fact that he invited his friends in. And
he's also constantly bringing them in. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. He's always, it's not like, oh, well, like even somebody like a John Roca, somebody that just wasn't around full time and just, I mean, I'm assuming they were instrumental in getting him that position. It's just fascinating, man. It's a feel-good story. And to your point about him talking about the subscriber count not being as much of a thing, too, it's also, as you and I, somebody that can relate to Mark and Kristian, as content creators having our own thing with Sight and Sound, one of the things that makes me happy is that by him saying that, also saying that they've always had this same vision, like the live show, the Schmoes Know Show in general. It's never really wavered. Like they've never shifted it to where, it's like, oh, we need to go this direction for more subscribers. Like it's not about that. It's about being true to themselves, being true to Schmoeville, being true to the show itself, and that's just very, very rewarding, I think, from a fan and from a fan group to hear that their main focus is delivering to a fan base that gives them so much back.
Right, and again, we shouldn't gloss over the fact they certainly show their appreciation for Schmoeville a lot, but definitely last night.
Not just them either, and that's the thing too. The people that aren't in it constantly, people that still have fond memories of Schmoeville, like even echoing things that I've said in my limited time, just how they're such a unique and special fan group. It was very, very awesome.
I don't want to gloss over Emma's story either, because I thought that story was we talked a lot about what Kristian bringing in his friends, but Emma's story was very singular, and the fact that like they didn't really know each other, but Kristian extended his hand anyway. And
he's running out of friends. He's got to bring in some new friends.
It's fascinating to me. Like, Kristian's like, yeah, she's good. I just got a feeling, and she'll fit right in. And he throws her on his live show because he knows what she can do, and he trusts her. And I thought that was just really interesting to hear too. Not that I'm sure that everyone else kind of has their own version of that story, but again, she wasn't necessarily someone who Kristian or Mark were already friends with. So I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah. She had the cosign of kin specifically, and the cosign of a friend goes a long way. And yeah, her story was unique, and it was nice to hear.
So, Jaye Williams, imagine yourself. You're there during the taping of the 300th episode. Kristian calls you to the mic and says, "Hey, I want to hear this."
Yeah,
Jaye
sure.
Williams.
I will take over the show for you. 301. Welcome to the Schmoes Know live show. Is that what you were going to ask me? You want me to take over? Is that what this is?
Jay, use this opportunity to say something nice and tell me a little bit about what Schmoes Know means to you.
Well, I mean, it's an honor. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's an honor to be able to do this show. It's an honor for me to be a part in some small capacity of this 300th episode, and for the short time that I've been available. But the fact that Kristian not only took a chance just on you, but also on me is very, very special. And when we got not only the approval to do After Schmoe together, but also get the cosign from Mark and Kristian, and Mark too. Mark has also been very vocal about, we've had back and forths before talking like, oh, what should we do? Should we do this? And we've bounced ideas off of Mark, and Mark has been very vocal, and he said, do exactly what you're doing. You have something nice going on. That's always meant a lot to me. But just the fact that they believed in you and I enough to expose us to Schmoeville is so big, because I'm sure they are extremely, extremely guarded about that fan group, and they should be, because of how special it is, and the fact that they believed in us enough to give us a platform to spread our word and our character, our brand, whatever you want to call it, to those people is very nice, and it's very special. So much so where it has given us essentially a platform for us to do our own thing. So when all those people in that room were telling their stories about how essentially Mark and Kristian helped them plant their roots in this industry, I mean, in a strange way, from Kentucky, I could relate to that. And it's in its infancy stages, but I will be forever grateful. And no matter what this show is, no matter what happens to it, our goals are, whatever, it is just an extreme honor for me to take part in it. And it's an extreme honor for me to do what I promised to do from episode 1 of me doing this, is provide the content that Schmoeville deserves, and that everybody there deserves as well. What do you want to say, Ryan Snelling? I know you've got a lot to say.
I do have a lot to say. And some of it might be a little bit repetitive, because I don't know if you know this about me, Jay, but sometimes I get a little soft.
I do. Hey, real quick, can I give you a little bit of credit on something real quick? I know you're going to be like, well, yeah, of course. I made this statement, and I don't know, I would never give you a compliment that I didn't legitimately believe. You know that about me.
Yeah.
I've not only have I always believed in you, in general, when you started doing this thing, I became obsessed with it because of how great of an opportunity it was and how great I knew that you would be at doing this. But I mentioned this to somebody, and people might disagree with this, and that's fine, but I will debate you until the end of time. But if it was not for you, and if it was not for even Paul Wolf to a certain extent, the both of you, SK Plus in the form that it is now, with fans doing their own shows, extending all this stuff, I don't know if it would even be where it is today. So that is very, very important, I think, for people to realize. So yeah, I just think that's very important to note. And again, we have to thank Kristian and Mark for having the trust to be able to do something like that and entrust this stuff and believe again in you and I enough and all these other people that do these shows to carry the brand forward.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
That's great. So you can pay me later.
I still owe you a birthday present. So I don't know if Kristian and Mark got them, but I've teased it before. I didn't really want to mention it, but I will now because it just kind of makes a lot of sense. But in the infamous package of T-shirts that I sent them, there were 5 individual cards that I wrote, and I don't know if they got them because half of them didn't even get their T-shirts, so I have no idea if they read any of the cards that I wrote for them. So if they did get the cards, my apologies if I'm a little bit repetitive here. But so I was a guy who I wanted to be in the film industry, but I didn't know how because I don't live in LA and I'm scared to death of LA, and I just failed at making an independent film. And I found this space on YouTube with particular people like Stuckman and FlickPick, and I was fascinated because they were just homegrown guys out of their mama's basement who had started doing this or whatever. But it got me to start my own podcast. So I had a podcast called Film Beef, and I'll never forget. I had an interview with Lexi Alexander coming up. And so I was doing a lot of research online to prepare for it because I didn't want to ask her the same questions, have the same kind of conversation. I found the Schmoes Know Live show episode with them and Lexi Alexander. And my first thought while watching that show was, is that Dane Cook? That's actually a true story. But no, I saw Kristian Harloff and Mark Ellis, and I remember their voices, I think their voices struck me the most. And I didn't know where they were. Like, I didn't know that was After Buzz Studio, but I knew that it sounded professional. And Ellis has a striking voice, but I think Harloff also has it's just a radio voice. And I remember thinking, I feel like this is something that I should be aware of or I should know about. Who are these guys? They're interviewing Lexi Alexander on YouTube. I remember, of course, like I said, I already followed Stuckman, and I found their video that they had done previously reacting to, I believe it was the Force Awakens trailer, I think, is when I found them again. I don't remember exactly the timeline, but I found that video. I guess it would have been the next summer, so like a massive time jump. And it was that summer, the summer of 2015, that I started to actually realize who these people were and learned about Collider and everything going, this Schmoes Know and all of that stuff. And starting that summer, I watched them every day. And I'll never forget seeing them doing that and saying, this is what I want for my life. There was so much admiration for what these guys had done that I wanted that for myself. And so I started thinking about Film Beef really differently, and I started going after these guys, and they made me nervous. I'll never forget asking Ellis to be interviewed on Film Beef, and it blew my mind that I was driving to meet him in person. I am someone from Kentucky who I'm kind of in awe and starstruck about things that go on in LA, even when it comes down to some YouTubers. To this day, I still can't believe that I know these guys in the capacity that I do, because I have Kristian Harloff, and I've said it before, he is my unknowing mentor. I have watched every single thing that he's done behind the scenes, or how he's handled me as a guy that kind of works underneath it. I have studied so much of what he's done, and I don't think he will ever know it. And I was even learning things up until last night, about how authentic everyone felt, and how I started to question, like, am I authentic? Am I coming across as authentic? Because all of these people were being so real and raw last night. I was learning up until last night things that I was watching them do. And again, like I said, I will never forget posting my interview of Mark Ellis, which was huge, but somehow the tweet from Kristian, the fact that he had heard that episode, was even bigger to me. Just the fact that he had heard it was bigger than the fact that, and no offense, Ellis, like, God, I love you, but it was just, my life felt insane, and it was just because of those small interactions. And the fact that he let me do After Schmoe, or Schmoeville podcast at the time, is mind-blowing. The fact that he never questioned, like, I volunteered myself to do this thing, and he never questioned me. He was just more about, like, coaching me. And when Schmoeville started to fall, the podcast started to fall a little bit, he picked me back up. And he came on the show, and he made me feel better about it. And it was never of, let's get somebody else. No, he was a coach. And to this day, he still coaches me. And I'm baffled. I talked about this last week, how I started to come around to my phone call that I had, because I realized that it was just part of it was a part of Schmoe history, and I just couldn't believe that was a thing. I think the last anniversary show that I watched was 250, and I don't have this memory. I don't remember if Schmoeville podcast ever came up. I don't remember I guess we were doing it at the time. But the fact that After Schmoe was such a huge part of last night, it's so weird to hear my name said from out of these guys' mouths. It's so weird to hear them talk about me. And I can't believe that a YouTube series does that. They talk about me. Because before all of that, like Riley said, I was at a horrible place in my life. I was lost. I didn't really have a whole lot of direction. I didn't feel confident in where my life was going. I didn't know how to be. And what I have with After Schmoe and the things, Sight and Sound, for me, what drives me is watching Collider and Schmoes Know. So everything that they have built is the engine, how my life is operated now. And it has been for the past 2 years. And so because of them, I have direction, I have structure, I have After Schmoe to fall back on every single week. And I will always, I don't know where the show ends up. I don't know I have no idea how much longer I know Mark and Kristian, but I will never, ever, this is arguably the biggest thing that's ever happened to me. And I'm just a guy with 48 followers, right, Makuga? It's always insanity all the time. And I haven't ever forgotten, what they've done for me. And if I ever act like I've forgotten, then shame on me. And I expect them to call me out on it. But I don't know what else I can say. But it's just, like Copster said, sometimes I just can't believe that it's I still have these guys as friends when I'm guilty of thinking that they were just guys on my TV, you know? So I owe them a lot for everything that you and I have. I just owe them a lot. And thank you so much for indirectly teaching me so much of what I know with Sight and Sound and After Schmoe and everything else. So yeah. And we joke, and I've joked about, I even did it last night. I joked about the 300th show being their last show, that they were going to announce it's their last show. And thank God that wasn't a reality. So that's all I got. I've gone on long enough.
Yeah, it was very, very well said. The last thing that I'll just add to it, it's for real, man. This is a fun show to do, and it wouldn't be a fun show to do if everybody there didn't make it such a fun show to do. You know what I mean? Like we do a lot of podcasting. Like we really do. If anybody's a first-time listener, we podcast a lot, and I stand by it. When I say it, this is my favorite podcast to do in terms of just pure fun level, and man, they make it really easy for that to be the case. So, yeah, man, here's to another 300 After Schmoes.
I'm sorry. I was long-winded, but I forgot something, and this is actually something that I told myself that I was going to bring up. I sort of talked about how my relationships with Kristian and Mark were wildly different. And I talked a lot about my relationship with Kristian. I just want to say that between Kristian and Mark, I know that Kristian is my mentor and my coach, and that's how I interpret whether he knows it or not. But of the two, I believe that Ellis is the one that's more so my friend. He's the one that I've talked to the most. I've met him, and I feel like that I can just talk to him anytime. And that's sort of always been the case. And he has always been just so supportive of me without questioning anything, much like Kristian. And but Ellis is, I consider him my buddy. And just earlier this week, he texted me because he knows about some things that are going on in my personal life. He asks me how I'm doing, and with detail. He knows some stuff that goes on. And when my car broke down, he texted me, "Hey man, what's going on? What's the situation? Are you all right?" I mean, we talked about that. Anytime he knows that I'm feeling down or sick, he'll ask me, "Hey, how's this going?" Blah blah blah. He genuinely gives a shit about me and you.
He follows me on Instagram.
And Kristian doesn't follow me on Instagram, so there you go. But no, Ellis is the buddy of mine, and he's the one that I consider a friend, and he is just as important to me as Kristian is. So shame on me for leaving him out, but I had to bring that up because it's the truth. And yeah, he's also the one that he's done like 3 or 4 podcasts with me, and it's just unreal. It's just unreal to me. But anyway, that's all I had.
He's got some t-shirts too.
Jay Williams, where can the people find you online?
You can find me at J Williams, J to the A to the Y to the E on Twitter and on Instagram. It's the same for both. You can also find me and Ryan, both of us, on Sight and Sound Weekly, every single week on SK Plus, also our podcast feed. We have a ton of other podcasts going on. Ryan's doing movie shows. I have a music show every single Friday. Sometimes we like to get together and do a little thing called After Party, which you see pop up on SK Plus every now and then. We particularly have a very fun time doing those. Maybe even a little bit inspired by the Schmoes Know live show. Yeah, a little bit. Ryan, where can they find you? You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell, and crying in my bedroom tonight. Thank you so much, Schmoeville, for joining us. We will see you next week, and we're going to talk about the next 300 shows. Thank you so much.